What is going on, Cyberfam? Happy Christmas Eve. Just going to be a really quick one. There's an issue with Log4j, which is kind of like this logging tool that pretty much a lot of applications use. Log4j is basically like a logging plugin that goes into a Java application and gives you a way to log every little piece of information that comes in. So it's actually quite powerful. It's very good. This kind of stuff in a web server can log anything within the application. Application logs, like, you know, if somebody pressed a button and it blew up, then it'll tell you, it'll log the error message and that kind of stuff, right? So if you click a page and it gives you like a 404 or something like that, right? Log4j handles that kind of error package. One aspect of it, but just to give you a general gist if you guys don't fully understand. The issue though is that it goes into the database, right? It stores all of the stuff in the database itself. So, you know, if there's a vulnerability, you're basically providing a backdoor into the data side. And not the main application data, but your logging data. So you could think about it in a way where something could happen where they could actually access all the logs in your entire web server, which could suck. And I want to discuss sort of like what this is and why it maybe is not that big of a deal and why it is a big deal for Palantir, for example, right? First off, let's touch on the Palantir part of it. Palantir released a vulnerability scanning tool about 2 weeks ago or somewhat. They have a public Git repo, so if you guys are developers, go take a look at that. But this tool, if you're using this instance of Log4j, it goes in and scans and it basically checks for any vulnerabilities, okay? Everyone's blowing up over this, right? Like, people in the community are blowing up. Guys, like, you got to take it easy a little bit. I did pump it as well, mainly because I appreciate this, and I'll tell you why, right? So when you build something from scratch, you very often use a lot of open source software. And in using this open source software, you have to build a lot of stuff from scratch. Like, a lot of things have to be completely built in. So when you use enterprise or third-party software, you don't have to do a lot of this stuff. It comes packaged with the product that you buy. So logging and all the stuff that Log4j touches, you can potentially use a third party and then they handle a lot of this stuff. You don't have to basically do it from scratch, for example. Let's just simplify that for a second. On top of this, when you're building such software, there's certain steps you have to take. It's very easy to actually build software. Software building is not that big of a problem. The problem is actually to be able to understand what part of the building steps are crucial for your scope. Yeah, the problem is a lot of folks don't actually take the necessary steps to document and, you know, basically just bolster their own software. They just want to build it fast, release it. If it works, then don't touch it after that. Seriously, that's common practice. So a lot of the code that's running on the internet, especially if it's spun up from scratch, you know, they pressure all these developers to finish it in a certain time frame, right? Whether it can or can't be is a different story altogether. I'm basically on the boat that says, you know, if you build it right, it takes the time it takes, as long as it's not ridiculous. It takes the time it takes, right? But a lot of project managers and stuff will basically push you to just do it really fast. Time is not the best indicator of, you know, value, for example, right? So anyway, there's lots of stuff like documentation, testing. A lot of these things go into building software from scratch. And Apache definitely does this. And Log4j is basically an Apache product. It's open source. Now, this is one of the big problems with using open source software, right? Now, to be very honest with you, I love open source. I use it all the time. Now, that being said, when you do it, you have to be very careful. They post release notes. They post all these documentation that says, okay, these are the possible issues with this, blah, 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 right? You have to look at that as a developer and take that into account. In this particular instance, it's actually not that big of a deal, okay? Now, it is and it isn't. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's not. It's not that big of a deal because it only affects like one version, or one or two versions if I'm from what I read, okay? And really, if you're a good dev team, right? If you're on top of things and if you're understanding what these versions are actually stored in a small sort of like portion of your code. And when you actually need to upgrade it, it's very simple. It's quite sometimes it's quite literally as simple as just changing a number and then having your automation process take over and it'll update it and all this other stuff. Other times you have to actually download the product, get all the right executables and all this other stuff and do it, depending on what level of automation your company's at, right? That's not that big of a deal, honestly. If this was affecting your company, it's as simple as doing a rollback or, you know, just going through a different version, pretty much, right? Apache's already released statements and they fixed it and all this other stuff. There's alternatives out there. Now, the reason why things are blowing up, right? And this is, I try to allude to this a lot when I talk about enterprise software, is a lot of the enterprise, a lot of the big companies, right? A lot of the big offerings, banks, all these other guys, right? They love Java. Of course, Java is a very core component of a lot of internet products in terms of code-based language, but they move slow, guys, right? So when they have to do some kind of versioning change, right? I'm talking like reality. I mean, If you guys are developers, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Like if me and you, if we were developers and we had to do it, it would be done like this. It would take like maybe a day, right? With some testing. If you don't have any testing, maybe it'll take 3-4 days. But the problem is with massive enterprises, there's so many different people. Basically what happens is as soon as something like this comes out, like anybody and everybody in the entire chain gets super pissed off about it. Seriously, like you people that don't even understand what's happening, all the way up. And you get this massive like cascading effect of bullshit that basically starts from the top. It's like, oh, who did this? I need a name. I need a number. Who did this? Like, find me that one developer guy that I need to like, you know, reprimand or some dumb shit like that. It's actually pretty stupid. This is exactly how enterprise stuff works. Not all of it, but I'm trying to tell you the majority. Okay, and they move very slow. There's a reason for it. The reason why they might move slow as well is because like the impact might be bigger, right? So this one particular version could be throughout, like it could be like ubiquitous in that entire organization, which is a problem, right? You have to make multiple changes. Then you're wondering how much can automation handle? Do we have to increase automation? How long will that take, right? A lot of times for stuff like this, people just do a quick rollback and it's pretty much good to go. But the problem is you're rolling back the entire software stack, and this is just one component of it. So, you know, there's intricacies to it, but to be honest, guys, it's not that big of a deal. Now, on the Palantir side, I think it's really cool because they built this utility and they know that they're using open source software, and they are aware that maybe things aren't being reported as it maybe should have been. So like they basically build this tool set to go and help people as well as themselves find vulnerabilities in their Log4j stack. So the whole Alibaba thing that I posted, right? It's very common. You can take it as, oh, look, like Alibaba sucks. You know, they're getting wrecked from Log4j or whatever. Credit to Kodak for bringing up the context. But basically, guys, these guys are like you know, of course, Alibaba is a Chinese company. They had this issue. They actually, from what I can tell, reported the issue, but the problem is they're under hot water from the CCP and basically the government of China, I guess, for not reporting to them first. Now this is a larger problem altogether. I did talk about it in my tweets, but to be honest, guys, like that sucks, okay? Especially because if you're in the open source community, you're trying to basically keep information open source, right? Because it's faster, it's more transparent, and you're helping pretty much everybody, including yourself. But if you have to go through some kind of proxy, like any form of government, forget China, like any form of government, then what you're doing is basically adding a layer in which they can know about these vulnerabilities before it even gets out, if it even gets out, right? Worst case scenario, somebody who gets wind of this information could find ways to attack your system, especially these old companies that don't have, you know, rollback policies or properly set up automation and stuff. Like they're completely sitting ducks. Think about it, right? Based on the error logs that they're getting from like a website, for instance, right? They can do like something with the error logging of a website that can basically trigger Log4j to run like some kind of script. I'm dumbing it down, really, right? I don't even understand it fully, but to be very honest with you, this kind of stuff happens. Other systems have this exact vulnerability, but it's just a matter of reading into it, looking at what it is, and if you're on the developer side, you already know it's not that big of a deal. It exposes the fact that, you know, if you're using open source, you got to be aware of what's happening, and not everything's going to be time crunch and all this other stuff, right? So like, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, Palantir is better than everybody, but the truth is they're just doing their due diligence. Looks like Alibaba tried to, and they're getting wrecked. So I don't know, guys. We'll see what it is. But if you guys are having this issue, guys, just roll back the versions or roll forward. Go with the Apache recommended strategy, and you know, stay level-headed. Don't blow up too much about it. And just, I don't know, just keep it steady, man. We're good. On a second note, it is Christmas Eve. I want to say Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate Christmas, and for the rest of you who do not, happy holidays. And I'm going to take the next few days and enjoy time with my family, as should you. Your stocks are going to be fine, guys, so I'll catch you all next week. All right? Love you. Peace.